Hey, how's it going? Zach D Productions here, and I'm here for an album review for you guys. So, for this review, I'll be reviewing the newest album by Sevendust, Truth Killer. I was kind of looking forward to this album, despite being somewhat underwhelmed with some of the singles, especially Everything, which I do think is the weakest among the singles, but not bad though. I wouldn't call it bad by any means. You could say it is just standard Sevendust, but yeah, I was just a little underwhelmed. I was really hoping that some of these singles would really wow me. I do like some of the singles though, of course, like Fence, which that was really the only song I really gave my take on so far on this channel prior to the album's release. And I do like the single Fence. I think it's a really good song and probably one of the best songs on this album as well. So the last time Sevendust released an album was in 2020, Blood and Stone, which I think that album is just okay. I don't think that album has held up all that well, in my personal opinion. I do think it is a step down from the album before that, All I See Is War, which that was the album that got me into Sevendust, believe it or not. So I have been a Sevendust fan since 2018, and I would say I've thoroughly enjoyed their music since then. So yeah, I've always liked All I See Is War, and then Blood and Stone came out, and I would say Blood and Stone is still a decent album. It does have some good songs, but it's just a major step down in my opinion. But I do have to say that this new album, Truth Killer, is definitely a step up from Blood and Stone in my personal opinion. I think that out of all their more recent stuff or their modern work, I would still say that All I See Is War is the best of their modern stuff, their more recent stuff. But I think that Truth Killer comes in close. It's definitely a runner-up, I'd say. Definitely a strong album, and one of my favorite albums of this year so far as well. So yeah, of course, you probably already know my thoughts. I do think that this is a really strong Sevendust album. You could say it is more of the same. It is just kind of what you would expect from Sevendust, but I think that they do the sound really well, I think. I mean, Sevendust is kind of an interesting band because, back in their early days, they were basically just straight up nu metal, and then you can tell in the early 2000s, specifically around the Seasons era, they started to take a look at what other bands were doing, such as Breaking Benjamin, and they started to take a look at what they were doing, what they sound like, and they just kind of incorporated that sound a little bit into their more recent stuff. They kind of do fit into that sort of post-grunge genre, which I think they do fairly well. I mean, usually when bands, sell out, so to speak, it's usually one of those cases where it's like, okay, well, the old stuff is good and the new stuff sucks. But that's not really the case with Sevendust. I mean, I definitely would say that their old stuff is better. I think that albums like the Self-Titled and Home are some of their best. But I do like their new stuff, though. I think that the thing is with Sevendust is, they can try different things, explore different ideas, but still remain in their sound. And I think that this album is a good example of that, and this album showcases that, I think, that, they can still incorporate their modern sound in with some of their classic roots, you could say. This album definitely has some riffs that are really meaty and really heavy, like songs like from the Self-Titled. One of the songs that really stood out to me, as far as heavy goes, is Love and Hate. I think that the riff work is something that stands out as far as heaviness goes. I think, this song embodies everything that you like about Sevendust. It does incorporate the heavy side of the band and with some great melodies as well. And you do get that throughout most of their work. I mean, on this album, you of course have the great melodies that Sevendust is best known for. I mean, I think songs like Messenger have some really strong melodies on this album. And of course, the singles I thought were pretty good as well. Of course, Fence, really heavy, and I've always liked this song. And you have other great tracks on this album. Of course, there's other highlights on the album as well, such as the title track, Truth Killer, a really strong track. You have No Revolution as well. another really strong track. So this album definitely has a lot going for it. If you like Sevendust, you probably will like this record. Now again, you could make the argument that this is just another Sevendust album. Like, it's one of those albums where if you've listened to Sevendust numerous times before, you know what you're getting on this album. You could argue that, but I think it's just done so well. I mean, it's really well done. So I can't really complain about it too much because it's just a really strong album. So yeah, and Sevendust, they're one of those bands that I feel that even if you're not really that heavily into nu metal, Sevendust is a band that does get a lot of respect from the metal community. I mean, you take a look at some concert clips on YouTube at some of their live shows, and there's mosh pits. I mean, Sevendust is not really a band you would think that would have mosh pits at their shows, but, you know, I saw some clips, and they do. Which is pretty interesting. I mean, granted, yes, Sevendust can make some pretty heavy music, so there is that. So it is cool that Sevendust is getting their just due, even though I would still say that they're still kind of an underrated band, if that makes sense. And of course, Lejean, his vocals are really good on the new album, Truth Killer, along with the musicians behind him. Lejean is, of course, a really good singer, and everyone just does a really good job on this album. So Truth Killer, I think it is one of the best albums of this year so far. It's honestly a runner-up for being maybe top 3, honestly. So, yeah, really strong album, I'd say. So, if I were to give this album a score, I'd probably have to give it either an 8 out of 10 or an 8.5 out of 10. I'm kind of going back and forth between those scores, but I know it's around an 8, I would say. So, really strong album. Highly recommend it if you like nu metal or alternative metal or post-grunge, hard rock, and of course, again, I'd say it's one of the best of the year. So check it out if you're a Sevendust fan. So let me know what you think if you've heard the new Sevendust album. So with that said, thanks for watching. Have a good one.